Folks, welcome back to another episode, Board Game Breakfast. This goes up every Monday, and there's a lot of different things that we have in our show. If you'd like to ask me some questions, Q&A, we'll be doing that today, early today. We'll be doing it at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you have any questions, come ask me some there. As for the rest of this, I have a lot of exciting things to talk about, so let's get right into the show. So for the news, first of all, from the Jumbo Group, this is from the Netherlands, they'll be making a new version of Stratego. Yeah, when I first heard this, I was probably like you, Stratego was good in the day, but this looks pretty interesting. First of all, you can see from the picture that it's much bigger than regular Stratego. There are 3 different factions that are available for it. I don't remember which ones they are. I think French, English, and Prussians. There's dice involved. There's cards. There's a lot of different changes here. So I'm very excited to see what this one will look like. Big bad news. Fantasy Flight announced last week how many of their things were going to be delayed due to the ports being held up, and it's just the Western ports has held up so many board games and Kickstarter fulfillment, and it may even affect us at the Dice Tower with our Kickstarter fulfillment. We'll have to wait and see on that, but just kind of a real pain there. It does seem like maybe things are starting to work out there, but that's affecting. There's probably many, many worse things in the world than board games that are being held up, but it certainly is one of the things affected. Mayfair has announced the 5th edition of Catan. Yes, that's right, no more Settlers of Catan, just Catan. And now we're going to see the new boxes with that on, Catan. So they're coming out with the 5th edition. All the expansions will be redone. It will be compatible with the 4th edition, so don't worry if you have expansions. Just that the artwork is going to be changed. That's what they've said. And speaking of Catan, Gail Katz, who is the producer of Air Force One and The Perfect Storm, has acquired the rights to make a movie and TV show about Settlers of Catan. I have no idea where there's even a story in this game. I mean, it's just a game. But then again, there was Battleship. Then there was that movie. Oh, Jared's going to have a field day with this. Now, this doesn't mean a movie is coming. It just means that she has the rights to make the movie. So we'll have to wait and see. Could be good, but history will show us that it's probably not. Hey folks, I'm Vasel here.
Jason Levine.
And today our question comes from Matt. And he wants to know about luck in games. He likes games with very little luck, but realizes that games can have some luck. And so he wants to know for us, how much luck can a game have before it becomes too lucky? At what point does luck become too much for us?
Well, me, I'm kind of in Matt's corner. I'm more of a Euro mechanic kind of person, so I don't like dice as much, even though I do like games with dice. We had just played some Attack Wing, which have dice. It depends how much the swings of luck are. Personally, I don't like too much luck. I mean, there could be some luck in a game, but not too much. I remember when we played Zaya Live that Z and Sam had a real problem that you could get anywhere from 1 to 10 damage with a single roll. So if you're using luck on a D10, it's much worse than luck on a D6 or on a D4. But in general, I don't like too much luck in a game.
I don't mind luck as much as Jason does, but for me, it also the length of the game matters. If a game is incredibly long, then I want the game to be somewhat less lucky, or I want at least the luck to balance out. My biggest disapproval of luck is when you play a fairly lengthy game, but it comes down to a few die rolls or a few draws. This is one reason I'm not a big fan of Eclipse as much, because drawing the tiles from the bag is lucky, and you only do that a few times over the course of the game, so it plays a huge luck roll. I don't like that. But if we're playing something like Liar's Dice or Yahtzee or something where you're just playing and it's only 20 minutes or 30 minutes, then luck away. Who cares?
Exactly. In a lot of those dice games like that, any of those roll for the ages, any of those, I think that the luck is great in it because it acts part of the game. Same with like Dice Masters, there's luck in it, but the luck is, you're rolling so many dice that the luck balances out over time.
Right. Another example for me is I love games like Axis and Allies and Fortress America and those. You roll lots of dice in those. Big deal. It balances out. Yes. You can have a horrible roll, but you'll probably have good rolls later on. But in a game like Fire and Axe, where you only roll like one die at very specific types in the game, if you mess up,
you're in
you
trouble.
will lose.
Exactly.
So for me, how critical the luck is at a specific moment is where it changes for me.
Yes, I agree with that very much.
All right, I'm Tom Vasel.
Jason Levine.
Send us questions at dicetower@gmail.com.
Mankind has a love-hate relationship with robots. On the one hand, they can do our jobs. On the other hand, they're taking our jobs. On the one hand, they're soulless killing machines. On the other hand, they are terrifying. On the one hand, they will vacuum our rooms. On the other hand, they are cyborg time travelers sent to destroy our future. With robots permeating our pop culture, it's no surprise they are taking over our games as well. Robots come in all shapes and sizes. Abaddon is Richard Borg's take on giant mech combat. It borrows heavily from the DNA of Battlelore and Memoir 44, but takes that DNA in its servo-actuated arms and flips it on its head. Instead of using cards to control your units and dice to determine the outcome of combat, you use dice to see which units you may control and play cards to vaporize your opponents with your particle cannon. King of New York from Richard Garfield and Yellow Games gives you a boatload of marauding monsters and one crazy robot named Rob. King of New York borrows heavily from its predecessor, King of Tokyo, but adds extra layers and strategy, making the game actually a game. Smash Up from AEG has an entire deck of robots with which to destroy your enemies. In addition, you combine your robots with another deck to create a unique faction every time you play. Dino robots? Yes please. Robo Ninjas? Awesome! For all you droidophiles out there, there is Fantasy Flight Games' new hit, Star Wars Imperial Assault. Imperial Assault is 2 games in 1. 1. It is a 2-player head-to-head tactical skirmish game, pitting one player as the heroic Imperial troops against a band of rebel scum. And number 2, it is a dungeon crawler style game like HeroQuest, Doom, or Descent that pits the heroes, a band of brave rebels, against...
Two things here. First, I want to look at the Dice Masters Army box. Basically, this opens up here, and it comes with some basically dividers here, where you can put these in here, and you can have different groups together that you'll fight, and then you put all your dice in the other side. It has a big magnet here. The whole thing closes. It's a little flimsier than I would like. I do like the artwork, but it stays together pretty nice. And so if you want to carry dice around, I would guess you could carry 3 complete sets in this around very easily, maybe 4. There is a decent amount of room, and the dice don't take up much room. This is a pretty cool carrying. But what's really cool is this. Now, I reviewed Dungeons & Dragons Attack Dice Masters, and here we have one of my favorite characters from Baldur's Gate, Minsk, and his pet Boo. Go for the eyes, Boo. And so this is a special character that will be a promo item for the game, and while active they get an experience token at the end of their turn. So you always get these experience tokens, but if he's removed, all their experience tokens go away. And he only comes with 1 die, which is a somewhat translucent purple die. Pretty neat, huh? Hey, would you like one? That's right, folks. I have 3 extra of these. I'm going to give them away to anybody who wants to enter a contest. So all you have to do to enter this contest is to email dicetowercontest@gmail.com, and in the header of your email, put Minsk. And then in the body, I want you to tell me what your favorite part of Board Game Breakfast is. That's all you got to do. I'll pick 3 random entries, and we will wait 2 weeks for this. And at 2 weeks, we'll announce the winners, and we'll send them out. Now this week for the Dice Tower, we'll be doing a few less reviews from my side. I'm going to be doing a couple top 10 lists, and if all goes well, we'll be doing the next in our board gaming terms videos. And so there's a couple other things. I will do a few reviews. I think we're doing Super Motherlode this week and the little card game expansions for Star Realms. But what will get people excited, I think what has everybody waiting for, is this is the week where Board Game Blender is going to debut on Thursday. You will likely see it every other Thursday. The other Thursday will be our top 10 lists. So I've seen some of it, not all of it yet, because there's still much of it in production, but it's going to be a different show than Board Game Breakfast. You may see some crossovers and stuff, but you're going to see some different things on it, and I think you'll be pleased with it. So that's coming out this Thursday. I hope to see you there. No live shows from the Dice Tower this week, but we'll do some next week to make up for it. Okay, let's go on.
Chaz Marler of Pair of Dice Paradise here with a special installment in my series on running a game group. This time, I'll share a tactic that I recently accidentally used in order to make an improvement to my game group's meetings. As I've mentioned before, community centers, places built and run by the city for the express purpose of giving members of the community a place to meet, can offer a lot of potential for game groups. Even though the rates to rent a community center can vary greatly. Now, my town's community center is where I host my game group. For the last year and a half, we've met there roughly every 2 weeks for great afternoons of gaming. Part of what's made this possible to do is that the rates to rent it are among the most affordable that I've seen anywhere. At least they were, because as of the new year, the rates to rent my town's community center quintupled. Now, while the members of my little game group could certainly afford to chip in to rent the facility at its previous rate, there's no way that we could afford to multiply that by a factor of 5. And at that price, we simply wouldn't be able to gather there anymore. So, fearing that my game group was doomed, a thought occurred to me. Since our group meets there on a regular basis, making us a steady customer, would it be possible to negotiate a rate with the city? Well, I figured that if I asked, the worst that would happen is that they'd say no. So I asked, and they said no. Well, specifically, they said, while the bylaws that govern the use of the community center allow the city to negotiate a discounted rate for one-time events, since your event is ongoing, we are unable to alter the price. You can't argue with logic that airtight. But then, they added, however, there is a provision in the bylaws that allows citizens to use the community center facilities up to 6 times a year, for free. Really? But I've been happy to pay... Okay. And so, somewhat by accident, my game group discovered an option that was ready and waiting to be used, allowing us to use the facility at no cost. But we only discovered it by asking questions. So, when you're looking for a location for your game group to meet at, don't hesitate to ask questions, because you never know what opportunities you'll reveal.
It's a brand new segment. Someone mentioned this on the forums at the Dice Tower, and I thought this is a great idea to do my top 100 expansions. Because I talk about board games, I do my top 100 games every year. So why not do a top 100 expansions? And I'm going to be doing that each board game breakfast. I'll do 5 expansions each time. Now, unlike board games, board games, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of board games, thousands of them really. So, there could be a game in my top 1,000 games that I really like. Behind me there's 350 games or so, and, so 250 of those are not in the top 100 list. That is not the exact same with expansions. With expansions, I was able to make a top 100 list, but I don't know that I could have gone much farther beyond 125 or so. So there's some really great expansions out there. There's just not thousands of them. Now I ranked these on how much I thought the expansion changed the base game for the better for me, and how much I like it now today still. So there are some expansions in the past that have changed a lot. But anyhow, you'll have to wait and see. But here we go. So number 100 is one I just reviewed last week, and that's the Siege Engines for the Duke. Now, the Duke is a 2-player abstract strategy game. Siege Engines added some really cool, like things that could blow up a whole bunch of tiles. Very strong, powerful, but slow maneuvering tiles. There's a lot of little expansions for the Duke. This is the only one in my top 100. Number 100, Siege Engines. Number 99 is Quarmageddon. Now, Quarmageddon was not the first expansion for Quarriors. It's the second, but it was the first big box. And one of the things it did was it introduced the new style of box that I'm now using for Dice Masters. So the box itself is a big portion of why this made the list. But it also came with some new rules for Quarriors, which changed the game completely for me, where you could buy multiple dice in a turn, where when you scored a die, you had to cull it from your collection, and that made Quarriors such a better game. A lot of fun. There's some cool characters and things in it, but it was those two things that made this number 99 for me. Number 98 is Carcassonne Inns and Cathedrals. Now, this isn't the only Carcassonne expansion on my list, and this is one I think that most people have as their favorite. I like it a lot, and that's why it's on my list, but not as much as some of the other ones you'll see later on. But I do like the Inns and Cathedrals. I like the cathedrals, big giant things that make your cities 3 points. But if you don't finish the city at all, then it's worth nothing. So there's a kind of push your luck. And the Inns, the 6-player, that's not that big of a deal. I hardly ever played Carcassonne with 6 now, but it did add another color, I suppose. And the large meeples, I really like the large meeples where they count as 2. So you have to know when the right time to put those out to take over someone else's city and or road. Carcassonne Inns and Cathedrals. Then Battleground Kingdoms. Now, I like Battleground Fantasy Warfare, and I like lots of the different factions for it. Battleground Kingdoms I enjoyed because it added sort of a campaign structure, although the campaign is really only for diehard people, but it added a great scenario generator for the game, where you were able to take some scenario, not just go out and fight each other. It had different scenarios and maps that you could put together, and I would have enjoyed it if there had been even more variety amongst the scenarios and maps, but there was enough there that it really helped bring the game to more than just a mindless smash and kill the other army. And then the last one for today, number 96, Defenders of the Realm Dragons. This expansion added 4 dragons that you were fighting. Now, it was neat in the original one that you were fighting a dragon and a demon and a giant orc, okay? But now you had 4 dragons, so this kind of offered a change-up. It had more cards, different decks, with more stuff, minions that did different things than the minions from the original game. So it was basically more of the same, but I liked Defenders of the Realm a lot, so adding these things in really bumped it up for me. So that's Defenders of the Realm Dragons.
Hello and welcome to the Discriminating Gamer. My name is Cody. So if you're like me, you love hidden traitor games. Games like Shadows over Camelot, Battlestar Galactica, Dead of Winter, The Resistance. These games are just a whole lot of fun, but there is something, of course, that is kind of the elephant in the room. Something we don't talk about when we discuss hidden traitor games like these, and that is the fact that some people simply cannot play these games. They cannot play these games for a very simple reason. Whenever they are picked as the traitor, they have shifty eyes. Now, they can't help it. Some people just naturally get shifty eyes when they're selected for these roles, but it's a dead giveaway, and the people who are not the traitors are always going to know who the traitors are if you suffer from shifty eyes. Now, many people, before playing these games, go in front of mirrors and practice various poker faces in the hopes that they won't give themselves away as traitors because of their shifty eyes. And very often, these people meet with failure. So today, I want to go ahead and teach you a few of my faces that I use when I'm the hidden traitor so that I am not suspected. First of all, there's the sheepish schoolboy. This lovable rascal looks just too innocent to possibly be a traitor. Next, there's the game show host. This guy's just having way too much fun to want to sabotage a crisis card. I call this the Benito Mussolini. With that jutting out chin and downturned brow, I dare you to call him a traitor. But it's not just faces. You can utilize props to take attention off of your shifty eyes. Well, I hope this helps you with your Hidden Traitor games. Next week, we're going to take a look at how to magically place more workers in your worker placement games. Not really.
Please somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't.
Hi, Suzanne here with this week's featured board game app. Board games with expansions, we see that all the time, but board games that retheme, especially bigger games, aren't as common. In a two-part feature, I'm going to be taking a look at Kingsburg and its sibling game Kingsport Festival. Both games have app versions, but do either belong on your device? Let's take a look. Kingsburg is a game of dice allocation and resource management. Your dice determine what resources you can take so that you can purchase buildings and battle monsters, all in the quest for victory points. Kingsburg is a popular game, and I really wanted to love the app. Unfortunately, the 2010 release really shows its age, and the developer isn't showing any signs of supporting the game. The last update was over 2 years ago, and they promised things like making the app universal and adding the expansion, but considering the length of time between that promise and today, I'm not holding my breath. Although it is interesting that the recently released Kingsport Festival from the same developer has resolved some of the issues Kingsburg has. The first thing to note is Kingsburg is for the iPhone or iPod only. It runs in 2x mode on an iPad, but you can see from the screenshots it gives you kind of a grainy experience. From a UI point of view, the app is just a mess. The rules are there, but they're not browsable. There is no tutorial, but there are these hints that quickly become more intrusive than helpful. And you have to force quit the app to turn them off. There's almost always 3 taps needed when none or 1 should do. Critical info such as the benefit of a building isn't front and center. The visual cues are inconsistent. And there are just things that show a lack of care taken in general. Gameplay-wise, it's Kingsburg, and you can absolutely play the game in the app. But I find the experience really clunky and slow. There's no online play, and pass and play is there, but treated with the same lack of care as the rest of the app. If I seem highly critical, it's because I think Kingsburg is a good game that deserves a better app. Fans deserve a better experience. If you love Kingsburg, then this is your only option for an officially licensed app version. But I would suggest only rabid fans of the board game give this one a try.
Hey folks, it's interesting in board gaming how different people play board games. There are people like me who love to play new stuff and just have a big kick with that. There are people who like to focus on a very specific game and concentrate on that game, and there's people who fall anywhere within the range. Each year we see, I saw many lists that go up this year, 10 by 10, where people say, here are 10 games that I'm going to play 10 times. Then there's people who are against that who say, I'm going to play 100 different games. I think you could probably do both. That might be an interesting thing to do. But anyhow, I've talked about this before, where a game can be a lifestyle. Call them lifestyle games. But I think some of these games promote not just a lifestyle, but a hobby within a hobby. And the hobby within a hobby games, the biggest culprit, and I don't mean it's a negative way, but the biggest example of that would be miniature games. Miniature games are a hobby within a hobby because you sit there and you play with them. And I was thinking about this the other day because I was looking at my Dungeons & Dragons Attack Wing stuff. And I was sitting there going, I can mix this card with that dragon. I can use this giant and this dragon together. And I was thinking of all the different ways I could combine stuff. And if you add painting and modeling on top of that, it even makes it even more of a hobby. But I was thinking about all these things, and I really enjoy that. And I thought, what if this was the only game I played? That would be my whole focus. My whole focus would be on each expansion as it came out and how it added to the game. Now, since none of these games is my specific focus, that's not that big of a deal. I look forward to the new waves of these games, but I don't sit there and think, so, that's not the sole focus. I'm as excited about a new board game that's been announced. So there's these hobbies that are out there. Magic the Gathering is certainly one of them, where they're constantly talking about the strategies for that game. And that kind of affects me, in a sense, to how I play these games. See, I just got rid of my Android Netrunner cards. And you say, Vasel, you said that was a really good game. Yeah, it is. It's an excellent game. Fantastically designed. But there's really nobody who I'm really wanting to play it with. See, there's a lot of people in my area who love Android Netrunner, but I cannot compete on the level that they are and play the game to the seriousness that they expect, having min-maxed their decks and fixed their decks and worked really hard to have great powerful decks and they can play exceedingly well. I can't play on that level. At the same time, if I want to teach new people the game, it is a chore, an exhausting chore to be able to do that because there's a lot going on in it. And so I could work hard and get this done, but that's just a hobby within a hobby that I'm not really willing to be part of, even though I do think the game is really quite good. Now, I don't want to give up on all these little hobbies within the hobby. Some of them I want to get involved with, but there's too many for me to follow. For example, Descent. I have a lot of Descent. I have almost everything for Descent because I like Descent a lot and I'm willing to play it. But I can play Descent on a semi-casual basis because even Descent will have people who will play a campaign once a week for years at a time. I like X-Wing. I like Dungeons & Dragons Attack Wing. I like Star Trek Attack Wing, but I had to get rid of Star Trek Attack Wing because I just couldn't really keep up with all of them. So I picked X-Wing for science fiction and Dungeons & Dragons for fantasy, and that's it. Even Dungeons & Dragons Fantasy I might not be following now if it wasn't for the fact that HeroScape is finished. When these things come out, they keep pumping stuff out. I got rid of the Star Wars card game for the same reason. I can't follow all these LCGs that are out there. So I have to kind of pick and choose. What am I interested in following? And I can be somewhat involved in one of these. Now, if you are involved in one tremendously, and you know this is the game, and you play this game before anything else, that's fantastic. I understand the feeling. I've been there with specific games in the past, and I think that's really neat. But if you're someone like me who likes to have a variety of games, I don't know that I want to have just one game that I'm really focused on, because if someone comes over who's not interested in that game, then we don't have as good of a connection. While right now, I would wager that there isn't one person watching this video who would come and we couldn't have fun playing one game together. Every once in a while, I'll see someone on the internet say, Tom and I have nothing in common. Yeah, we do. There's some game here that we'll have in common, and that's why I like the large variety. But I do think it's neat when people really get focused on a game. I think it's neat when people mod and do all sorts of things for a game. But when you're like me and there's all these different games, you can only follow them somewhat on the fringe. So there are some that I follow heavily. Dice Masters, Dungeons & Dragons Attack Wing, X-Wing, and even X-Wing might fade depending on how cool Armada is when it comes out. It's really interesting how this all works together. So, I don't know. It's interesting to watch and see, but it's exhausting. You can't keep up with all of them, so you have to pick and choose.
As the great William Shatner once said, "First thing we do, let's kill all the lawyers." It is sound advice for a civilized society, and something to help sell merchandise at Renaissance fairs and theaters. But context is the thing wherein we'll catch the conscience of the king. Shakespeare didn't say we should kill all the lawyers. A character in one of his plays said we should. Namely, Dick the Butcher from Henry VI Part 2, a character the Wall Street Journal recently described as dopey. So is Shakespeare speaking from the dust saying that we should kill all the lawyers? Well, that's for scholars to debate, but what we here at Whitleypedia are going to discuss is the subject of rules lawyering, which can sometimes be very contentious at our gaming tables. Today, we'll look at the history of the term. We'll talk about a rules lawyer at a board game table, but the term actually comes from RPGs, specifically this one. One problem with RPGs is they aren't designed by one person at one time. We can play Donald X. Vaccarino's Dominion, and regardless of which expansions we're using, we know that he designed every single card. We can even go to his blog and read his rationale for why he designed certain cards certain ways. So rules collisions are very rare, but this isn't the case for RPGs. Dungeons & Dragons was created in 1974 by Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax, but they almost immediately started monkeying with the rules. Not just the two of them, but other people as well. Additional books, modules, articles, and magazines were all printed that changed the character of the game.
Game?
You created an opportunity for some people to say, well, I don't care if this rule says I can't do that, because this rule says I can. So with all this source material to draw from, it's no surprise that some enterprising players tried to optimize them to find an advantage, just like normal lawyers do for their clients. But is that a bad thing? And how does it apply to board games? Well, we'll answer those two separate, but equally important questions next time.
play Stone Age on my phone. And then I realised that my phone is Stone Age. Do you think that if I stuck a sign outside I'd get some clients? "28 years on the shelf and still unplayed." This is the game that changed my life. It made me
We'll also be doing our top 10 worst games of all time. Well.
Sandwich bags? We don't need no stinking sandwich bags. Boxes! They're better for components and games. But not so good for sandwiches. Idiot.
Well, folks, that's it. Come back tomorrow, Tuesday, for the Dice Tower audio podcast. If you've never listened to our audio show, you can find that at dicetower.com. Like I said, again, questions at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time today. Board Game Blender coming out Thursday. Lots of great stuff. Guys, you've been a great audience. I'd like to thank all my contributors. They are top-notch. Thank you, everybody. Even Barry. Anyhow, until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been watching Board Game Breakfast.
Thanks for watching Board Game Breakfast. Tune in each week for your daily dose of gaming goodness with Tom Vasel and all the gang. Until next time, I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching Board Game Breakfast, a Dice Tower production, sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., an amazing place to buy board games. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.